to the Oviedo City Council work session. It is Monday, March 25th, about 5 minutes after 6. We have all members of council present. We have 4 items to go through this evening, and then I believe we have an executive session afterwards. Correct, Mr. Cobb?
That is correct.
Yes. All righty. So let's see if we can get through these 4 items and get to that. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Cobb. First one is a 2019 state legislative session update.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight is the kickoff work session for our FY 2019 and 20 budget. And so one of the things we wanted to kick off with before we dive into the budget process itself is to get you up to date on what's happening in Tallahassee so far. Mr. Kelly's here to give you an overview, and one of the things that we're concentrating on is what bills are up there right now that have a possible impact on our budget process. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kelly and let him give the update.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Obviously, as we get our budget process started, so has the state. The House and Senate have both put out their respective budget proposals. The House budget came in at about $89.9 billion. The Senate's budget came in at 90.3. So there's a little bit of a difference there. That the
say 70 and 90.
89.9 and 90.3.
Doesn't the governor want 93?
The governor wants 91.3. So
yes.
All three are a little bit different. They all have their own priorities, and the horse trading will now ensue. It's been a bit of a slow start, from my understanding. They've only passed one bill so far, and that is the smokable medical marijuana bill. So there's still a lot of work to go. On the table are many bills regarding preemption, and we'd like to call them mandates or unfunded mandates. So the state legislature tends to say you can or cannot do something, which causes us to spend more money or costs us revenue. And the mandates, again, cause us to spend more money. So going forward, we have several bills I want to look at tonight and inform you of. And we've been working diligently with our lobby firm, Gray Robinson, on many of these issues. And we'd like to thank them for their efforts. They're staying on top of this while up in Tallahassee, and they do a very good job for us. Getting started, we'd like to look at Senate Bill 1748 and House Bill 3. That one has a wonderful title from our perspective. It's called Preemption of Local Professional Occupational Regulations and Licensing. So they put the preemption of local rules right in the title on this one. It expressly preempts the regulation and licensing of professions and occupations to the state and supersedes many local government regulation or license requirements of professions and occupations. Initially, this bill had a very broad definition for the terms occupation, profession, and regulation, and it included in the term definition of regulation, it would include any associated fee. Our initial concern was this could include business tax receipts or maybe possibly franchise fees. We're working with the lobbyists to discuss any changes that may come. They're keeping a very sharp eye on this, although it's my understanding recently that an amendment to this bill has been issued, and it will be pared down substantially. But it will include the state's express preemption of specific business licenses, such as construction, drywall repair, or something like that. As I said before, it's ongoing. It's one of those very fluid situations that'll be worked out as that horse trading I spoke about continues. Moving on, there's House Bill 5 and Senate Bill 336. This one could have a significant impact on Oviedo going forward. It requires a 66% of the vote for not only the county board, but the ballot referendum approval of a discretionary surtax. So a 1-cent sales tax like we have that's funding many projects within the city, our intelligent transportation system, the widening of County Road 426, 419. Those types of projects we could see very hard to get approved in the future. That's about $19 million, what we estimate to get from the third-generation sales tax that we're currently funding our projects with. So 66% approval would make that significantly more difficult to get passed. The previous third-generation sales tax, 1-cent sales tax, passed with 52% of the vote. So that would not be, we would not be able to fund those projects if this current rule was in effect. Next, we have a communications service bill, Senate Bill 1000, House Bill 693. This bill seeks to reduce the communications service tax by 1% on all communications services such as wireline, mobile communications, cable video service, and direct-to-home satellite service. The city of Oviedo collects about $1.2 million a year from this source. 1% loss, I can even do that math, it's about $120,000. So that's still, as you start to add up these types of preemptions, could see some significant decreases.
That's 66%. So if the county put out another referendum, they would say it had to be 66%.
Right.
It's twice. It's 66.
66.
The board would have to pass it by a 66% vote to put it on the ballot, and then the ballot would have to pass with a 66% vote. Is that right?
Yes.
So basically, they just tell the county how to handle it. That it's another one. Do as I say.
Yes.
The communication services, we were already looking at that. Those revenues declining over time.
Correct. Mr. Boop has pointed out in the past that revenue is lowering. Less and less people have landlines, so that's one less product or industry that is taxed on that.
Right.
I don't have one. Moving on, a CRA bill's up as well, which could affect how our administrative expenditures. It increases the audit, ethics, reporting, accountability measures for CRAs. It also requires the CRAs to annually submit additional reporting information on top of what they already do in their annual report to the state regarding number of projects started, number of projects completed, commercial vacancy rates, amounts expended on affordable housing, and other things. Again, it takes staff time to procure this type of information and identify it and report it to the state. So that's one of those unfunded mandates I spoke to earlier. Moving on again, we have a House Bill 857 and Senate Bill 426. It's a firefighter is the title of the bill, firefighters. This bill makes firefighters who are diagnosed with certain cancers eligible to receive disability or death benefits, specifically in lieu of pursuing workers' compensation coverage. A firefighter is entitled to cancer treatment and a one-time cash payout of $25,000 upon the firefighter's initial diagnosis of cancer. In addition, each employer must provide coverage with an employer-sponsored health plan through group health insurance benefit. All out-of-pocket expenses such as deductible, co-pays, or co-insurance costs must also be paid by employer. Everyone around the country is seeing health insurance costs go up. We are no exception. Something like this hitting our books makes it much more difficult for us to anticipate cost for our health needs for our employees. So again, another unfunded mandate from the state saying you have to do this, but we are not going to obviously be involved in recouping those costs. Again, we have another unfunded mandate. It's called House Bill 207, Senate Bill 144, impact fees. The similar bills require the collection of impact fees to occur no earlier than the issuance of a property's building permit. The bills require local governments to specifically earmark funds collected by the impact fees for acquiring, constructing, or improving capital facilities to benefit the new users associated with that project. Additional conditions of the bill include earmarking impact fees, funds for capital facilities that benefit new residents, and prohibiting the use of impact fee revenues to pay existing debt unless specific conditions are met. Some of the effects of this bill could be the bill may limit the city's flexibility to shift assets derived from impact fees where needed, and they also may affect the ability to pledge impact fees to pay bond debt as well.
Do we currently, we don't currently do that. Most of the time we use it or set it aside for future use right now, don't we? Or
We do have some bonds that are pledged with impact fees,
Okay.
but we do try to utilize the impact fees for capital costs as well, especially capacity costs. That's the main thing that we try to push the impact fees toward. But the first thing we do is pay the debt that was promised. These are older bond issuances from years ago, and then once that, then whatever's left over, we shift into the into capacity type capitals.
Okay.
Up next is Senate Bill 350 or House Bill 1155. This also has to do with impact fees, but in regards to affordable housing. This bill allows local governments the option to waive impact fees related to affordable housing construction developments. If a local government does enact an impact fee, then the bills require the government to report the additional items that it's in its annual financial report. This bill, it also establishes a new permit process for local governments related to affordable housing construction. We've seen in the last couple of years more and more of the priority coming out of the state is affordable housing. We've heard about shortages of it, and this is a effect of that. The state's starting to act on some of their rhetoric of pointing out affordable housing shortages. And
Do they define what an affordable house is?
not to my knowledge, though.
Of course not.
But it may. City, there could be a loss of revenue should we permit an affordable housing project within the city that's associated with the impact fees that can
Well,
service.
a rent control project would obviously qualify, but what else could fall into that? I mean, I don't think we would, I mean, what's affordable? I mean, affordable in Oviedo is different than what's affordable elsewhere.
Correct.
There used to be a measurement that was a percentage of household income, and that's what would qualify if the household would qualify whether or not it was considered an affordable housing. They had to go through a special state process, and they had to demonstrate that either the rent or the mortgage. I want to say it was 30%, no more than 30% of household income, but that was quite a while ago.
I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, all of these bills that you're talking about right now, I mean, they're going to get changed 100
Correct.
times before the end of session. But it's always fun to see the sausage being made, so to speak.
Some, as you will see, especially the one that you all had highlighted as a priority, the distracted driving bill, which I'll talk about in a little while, was substantially changed. Strike all amendments happen all the time, and they basically rewrite the entire bill under a new or sometimes the same title.
And then there'll be the horse trading in the budget.
And the House the House is considerably more conservative than the Senate, and they take a much more conservative line approach to governing, and the Senate usually tapers that down a little bit going forward. So hopefully that trend will continue from our perspective.
We'll see.
A couple more to get through here. House Bill 127, Senate Bill 142 requires municipalities to create a building permit inspection and utilization report containing certain information and to post publicly such report on the municipality's website. Again, another mandate that we have to provide something or do something that will cost staff time and cost us money to produce, and the state obviously says you have to do it and does not give us the means.
We don't have a sheet right now of our permit fees somewhere?
We do.
All right.
But there's additional items on that report that we would have to produce.
That's not the worst one there.
No. But again, it adds up. Senate Bill 816 and House Bill 771 has to do with environmental regulation. This requires cities to address contamination of recyclable material, which is a hot topic, obviously. We've heard from our waste hauler.
for that.
So new contracts executed after July 1st, which is an important date for us as we move to renegotiate ours with Republic Services, must define the term contaminated recyclable material in a manner which is appropriate for the local community. And you also must include strategies and obligations of the parties to reduce the amount of contaminated recyclable material being collected or processed. You also have to create procedures for identifying, documenting, managing, and rejecting contaminated recyclable material, and then authorize remedies in handling contaminated containers and provide education and enforcement measures for collection contracts. As I said, as we continue our negotiations with the public, this obviously is getting noticed across the state. And we'll have to rethink how we think green or recycle. I know Orange County, for instance, is hiring a subcontractor to pop lids and inspect people's recycle, and I believe cite folks who do not properly recycle material. So that type of thing is coming from other agencies and counties in the state. So this type of legislation, that's what they're looking for, in my opinion. Senate Bill 1616 and House Bill 861 has to do with local government financial reporting. Bill requires each county municipality budget office to file an annual report to the Office of Economic, Demographic, and Research. We already file multiple reports. But this is in a new format that is prescribed by the Office of Economic Demographic Research, and you have to include information concerning government spending per resident, included the rate of 5% over the previous fiscal years, government debt per resident, including the rate of 5 for the preceding 5 fiscal years as well, median income, percent of the entity's budget spent on salaries that benefits for the entity's employees, and the number of special taxing districts, like our CRA, I believe, that are located wholly or partially within the county or municipality. Again, mandate which is set down by the state to us. Moving along, we have House Bill 829, has to do with attorney's fees and costs. This bill will require local governments who enact an ordinance which the state has already preempted to pay all of the attorney's fees if the ruling is against the local municipality. Automatically done, you have to do it. So obviously if something like that were to occur within the city, we'd have to foot the bill for the costs. One last item sort of on this side of things. We have House Bill 1036 and Senate Bill 1036, House Bill 715, which is Florida Building Code Enforcement. This bill limits the amount of revenue which may be generated from enforcing Florida's building code. So if our code enforcement office finds more than we spend, we'd have to either we'd have to rebate the fund, reduce the fees, enhance the service or efficiency, or provide funding for a nonprofit that expands training and opportunities for the construction industry. Again, unfunded mandate. We're seeing, you notice the trend. This type of thing is not unusual for the state. We do have some good news. It's not all bad. So I thought I'd end on a couple of higher notes. Senate Bill 1676 and House Bill 1235 removes our requirement to pay for newspaper advertising for our public notices. So when we have a public hearing come up, we would be able to just put it on the website or put it digitally rather than pay a newspaper, which is less cost effective than, and in some cases possibly less effective in getting the word out. So
Newspaper lobbyists haven't gotten a hold of that yet.
we shall see. We also have the aforementioned Florida distracted driving law. It was the Florida ban on texting while driving. Since then, it has been amended with the strike-all amendment, and it authorizes now the ban on driving while distracted, and it's a punishable primary moving violation. It is defined to include a number of physical activities, including handheld use of wireless communication device while driving, reading, writing, grooming, applying beauty products, interacting with pets or unsecured cargo, and engaging in any other activity, conduct, task, or action which may cause a distraction. Previously, you gave Councilmember Chudnow the go-ahead to engage on this issue. He and I have crafted a letter which has been sent to the 40 Florida senators and the some key chairmen and women in the House, and they are acting in support of it. Last I spoke with the lobbyists, Gray Robinson. They are expecting the bill to see the Senate floor, which has been the holdup in the previous years.
Do you think it'll pass this time, Chris?
They haven't said whether or not it'll pass. It's getting one step closer to the goal line, though, we'll say.
Is it the same senator who killed it last year?
I don't believe so.
He's on board now?
I don't know that he's involved, but I know that it's been assured by the chairman of the committee that it will reach the floor.
I asked the speaker, the former speaker, who's now the Education Commissioner, last year. He said, yeah, he ain't on it this year, but next year something else could happen. He'll get something he wants or whatever, and they'll work it through. And we need that. We got to have that. I'm tired of blowing my horn at people every day that are coming in my lane doing this. It's ridiculous. Right, Chief?
That's true, but even with this bill, that won't stop.
No.
But at least
it'll get better. People start to get the word.
At
It'll get
least
better.
they'll be able to.
The New Yorker's always going to blow his horn. You're right.
Lastly, the city has requested an appropriation from the state regarding its regional stormwater pond. That project has been funded in the House. A little bit of an update last week, in the Senate, at the tune of $150,000 right now. Chris and his team are working on moving that forward and hopefully bumping up that number a little bit. It does have a state impact. It takes water from State Road 434, as well as it does help the city with its total minimum daily allowance of particulates and minerals, pollution, basically, for the layperson into Lake Jessup. So it does take water from the state road and reduces pollution in Lake Jessup, a FDEP, what do they call it, impaired body of water. So a little bit of good news, but I will leave you with one other thing that has come across my desk since this as well. There is a constitutional amendment working its way through the process for 2020, which will deregulate Florida's energy industry. If that were to pass, it would eliminate all of our franchise fees for the electrics, which is about $2.1 million in general fund revenue. So that would be a significant blow to our budget.
The deregulation, would that mean that another electric company could come in and overbuild each other like they've done with cable TV companies?
I'm not sure that affects the infrastructure, but it does affect who the consumer can buy electricity from.
Right, because in the FPL area, Duke could come in and overbuild them, just kind of like, AT&T is always stringing lines past spectrums and everything, so deregulation means you could have competition for electric.
You would basically separate the lines from the generators And so then you would be able to serve, anybody could serve a customer, retail or wholesale.
Yeah, but isn't it then those who control the transmission lines hold all the gold?
Well, that's the big crux of it, is to figure out what do you do with those assets. You know, is it a for-profit, because most of the large transmission providers in the state of Florida are investor-owned utilities.
Gotcha.
So you've got to figure out how to handle that, or is it going to be more of a, like some states where it's a non-profit or organization, and you just kind of you subscribe to so much transmission.
How is our state rep, state senator feel about all this taking over the city's business? I mean, it's David and David. I mean, do they fight this, or do they go along with this? Do we know? I always knew where Jason stood. I have no idea where the rest of them stand. I mean, it's like every year. I mean, pretty soon you won't have nothing to do on the city council. You won't need people to run for the city council, because it'll be taking everything away from us to do. It'll be like, what do we do? That's the ultimate goal. I mean, this is really ridiculous. Do we know where they are?
I will say that a lot of this, on the House side at least, is driven by leadership and their agenda for the state. I cannot speak for Representative Smith as far as what he feels. He was in a meeting with other members of the Florida League of Cities. He was very supportive of home rule. Although I haven't followed his committee votes or votes on any of these. Obviously, they haven't passed more than one bill so far, so we haven't been able to see where he stands as far as his voting record yet. As in the Senate, obviously, as I mentioned before, the Senate has always been a little less draconian as far as the home rule goes. They have not taken the stance of hardcore preemption and mandate.
Yeah, it's usually the Senate's where this stuff gets killed.
And I will say, I think I made a typo for the 1% on, I just looked down and saw I think I had too many zeros there. So, my apologies.
Anything else? Anything else for Patrick?
We'll stay vigilant. We'll stay in contact with Chris and his teams. Any updates that come on these bills, which are in their report, and others, we'll stay in contact with you and see how it all goes. As I said, it's a wild ride for 60 days in Tallahassee.
All righty. Thank you, Patrick.
Mayor, right now we're sending the message that we're opposed to these things. I hope that's still what we should be doing. Just want to make sure.
Looks like you have general consensus.
Okay.
Any questions?
Good.
All right. Item number 2, discussion of election costs. Brian, who's going to handle this?
I will, Mayor. Thank you. On November 5th, we're going to have an election for mayor and for council member group 1. What we would like to do tonight is get some direction regarding polling places, early voting. In 2017, the last time that we did this, we opened up 3 polling places, Live Oak Reserve Community Center, the Riverside Park, and the Vito City Hall, and we did one day of early voting. Ms. Babor has provided you with a spreadsheet that gives you some cost estimates. If we were to open up everything, it would be the election would probably cost us approximately $32,906. Based on what we experienced in 2017, I think opening up the 3 polling places and then doing the one day of early voting actually worked pretty well. But we wanted to check with you to see if you wanted us to do like we did in 2017, or if there was something else that you would like us to do for 2019. That way we can start to build this into the budget now and prepare for that.
What's the cost for the 3? Is that the
Cost for the
16,000
3?
number I see?
Is that
Oh, that's the other
the
cost.
3?
I just don't see a cost.
Yeah, I think we did the analysis on everything.
You got 50.
Well, I don't think we have to open up everything. We did that once or
Right.
twice, and I'm fine with what we did last time.
Yeah, you get the 5,800 to mail out, because you got to tell people different precincts, right?
Right.
So City
I think
Hall,
the mayor's probably about right. It's around the 16,000.
16, as opposed to 32. Yeah, I mean, I didn't get any complaints 2 years ago. You know, you had three open all around the city. Yeah, that's fine.
I'm good with that.
I'm fine.
So that means it's going to be Live Oak Riverside City Hall. There you go.
And City Hall on one day of early voting?
That'll be here at City Hall.
Yeah.
Or the supervisor's office, they can walk there too.
That is one thing the supervisor will do. They will coordinate, the day so that all the cities and that their office will be open at the same time.
So it'll be Saturday, you have the one-day early voting here, and then those 3 precincts open like we did 2 years ago.
Yes, sir.
All righty.
Great, thank you.
Item number 3, the kickoff of the budget.
All right, Mayor, thank you. This is our first work session to report of our budget process. We kicked off our CIP process. We recently kicked off the operating budget process as well. This is our annual Here's Where We Are meeting, and so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Boop and let him walk you through the model, just to let you know where we are at this point in time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cobb. Honorable Mayor, City Council members, as you know, at this time of the year, the budget is extremely fluid. What this presentation provides us is a comparison of the 2020 projection against the current year budget, which is 2019. When we started the budget process a couple months ago, we were initially thinking that a 7% increase in the ad valorem revenue would be a conservative estimated increase. What we've since learned, following the development of this budget and following the providing you this information here, is that the entire city has increased 7%, which also includes the CRA. Now, because it includes the CRA, I sent you an email last week, you know that the CRA increased 20%. So that's a little bit of a tilt. What that means is that it will be taking more revenues away from the general fund than we had estimated here, the $817,670. Our preliminary estimates at this point in time, and we know that this number can go up and it can go down, is that this number is really about $757,000. An additional $70,000 will come out of the general fund and go to the CRA. With utility taxes, we are trending an increase this year by $148,500. Business tax receipts, we're very conservative there, and we kind of wait until we get further along in the budget process before we provide any estimates there. We're holding those flat at the present time. Licenses, permits, and fees. This is the landing point where Patrick was talking a few moments ago about franchise fees. There's about $2.4 million in electric franchise fees in here. In addition to that, there's actually, I'll take that back, there's about $1.4 million in franchise fees in there. And there's an additional $1 million in communication services taxes in there. At one point in time, we collected $1.7 million in communication services taxes. Last year, Patrick's right, we estimated to collect about $1.2 million. I think we came in a little bit over almost $1.1 million. And so those numbers go down year over year as businesses migrate to other technologies. But nonetheless, we're projecting this line to increase $150,000. Now, intergovernmental and charges for services, we're holding those flat right now until we get a little bit further along in the budget process. Same with fines and forfeitures and other revenues. As the budget process matures, we'll refine those numbers and present those to you. Right now, we are not presenting any use of fund balance, so what that means is that our current estimate projected for revenue for 2020 is $29.4 million compared to the current year of $28.5 million, which is a $906,000 increase. But again, we're early in the process. These numbers are very fluid. I expect them to go up as we go forward. Any questions about revenues?
The ad valorem revenue, does that include the 50% that we keep from the CRA area?
Yes. If we had the information from the property appraiser before we presented or created this printout, this number would be $757,000, which does include the 50% increase.
Okay.
Okay? Any more questions? Okay. Looking at expenses. Looking at expenses, we've programmed in a 3% increase for general government salaries and benefits, which is $196,000. Police and fire salaries and benefits are based on contract. Those are $247,000 and $236,000 respectively. Overtime, small increase, $22,600. Health insurance, we've programmed in an increase of 10%, which is the general rule every year that we program in 10%. However, I've got good news this year. It looks like our health insurance is trending right about 7 or 8%. So if that trend holds true between now and I want to say June, July, I expect this number to come down perhaps by 30 or 40, maybe even $50,000. We're working with our broker, Garing Group, and we're trying to finalize what the medical trend is going to be for this fiscal year. Once we get that number, I'm sure that this number will be reduced, barring any adverse activity within our health insurance fund. Workers' compensation, we've built in a 10% increase pending the RFP for insurance services as a placeholder. The vehicle replacement fund, we've programmed in an increase of $500,000. Year over year, we've used the vehicle replacement fund as a vehicle to balance the budget. So at this point in time of the year, we're going in with a much higher number than we have in previous years, hoping that we can catch up, and that number will be adjusted accordingly if we have to. Looking at general insurance, we increased about 10%. A lot going on that line. The liability tort cap has been increased from $100,000 to $250,000, so that's driving up our claims experience a little bit. In addition to that, there's been somewhat of a withdrawal from the property markets of some of the major catastrophic carriers like Lloyd's of London. So there's a constriction going on here which could potentially drive up prices between now and the time that we either renew or to obtain coverage from another carrier. So we're watching that very closely. Operating expenses, we programmed in an increase of 5%, which is $299,000. Now, the reserve for contingency, the last year's reserve, or I should say the current year reserve, is $361,000. We've programmed in $450,000 this year, which is comprised of three major things: $100,000 for just a general reserve, $250,000 for building maintenance, and another $100,000 for retirements. So that's the increase of the $88,000. Total expenses are $31 million at this point in time. Compared to the revenues, we have a shortfall of $1.5 million at this point in time in March. Are there any questions about expenses?
On the insurance side, are the city still going out to do an RFP for insurance services this year?
Yes, sir. We are in the process of doing that right now. HR is working with cyber insurance consultants to develop the RFP. As soon as that RFP is finalized, it will be advertised on VendorLink and issued out.
Perfect.
Okay? Which could be sometime next week.
Okay.
Again, at this point in time, we're looking at a net operating loss before any other adjustments of $1.5 million. Looking at the transfers in, transfers out debt. Transfers in, we reduced this by $398 to take out of this line the recurring revenues that we always budget later on in the process. Those recurring revenues are brought in back down here as impact from selected options. Those are the transfer from the CRA for the debt service, the transfer from the CRA for work that's performed on their behalf from folks in the general fund, and also an additional $50,000 from building services, which we budget a little bit later once that information becomes more granular from the building services department. Transfers out remains flat. That represents a $125,000 transfer to the IT Technology Fund. The remaining $105,000 pays off intercompany loans for the completion of Center Lake Park and also the fire station. Transfers out debt this year this next year will drop significantly by $261,000, and that is directly related to the payoff of the 2012 revenue notes. Any questions about transfers? Okay. Moving on, taking the transfers into consideration, we have a net result before the impact from selected options, which again is related to this number right here, which yields us a shortfall at this point in time of $941,000. Looking at the operating reserve, before I flow through all these numbers here, I want to park here for a second. We are just now in the process of completing our 2018 CAFR. The CAFR has presented to us an ending fund balance of $6.8 million, which is quite phenomenal, quite honestly. I never dreamt that we would be in this position this quickly in the process of recovering from where we were back in 2012. Back in 2012, our ending fund balance was $2.9 million. And at $2.9 million, we were below the city policy of 15%. But we were able to report to you that we met city policy because it was 14.53% and it rounded up to 15%. At $2.9 million, I was telling Mr. Cobb when I first started, I was genuinely concerned about our ability to meet any potential impact from any major storms or atrocities or hurricanes or things of that nature. With a fund balance of $2.9 million, you just can't do much with that. When I was at the city of Sanford back in 2004, Hurricane Charlie, Jean, and Francis, within the first month we paid out $6 million in debris removal. So one of the first things I did when I started back in 2012 is we immediately went out for a note. As you'll remember, we got a $3.9 million revenue note, which eventually went on to be used for other projects within the city. We were on our way to recovery, and the major component of that note was used for Center Lake Park, which has been a major economic engine for the city of Oviedo. Okay? So you can see the effect of all those decisions and what that has brought us to today. I expect this trend to stay about the same. And looking at that number, I feel very confident that the general fund at this point in time, because of the good decisions that you have made, the good decisions that Bobby Wyatt has made, the things that he's worked on with the lighting district and pulling those things out of the general fund, we finally have reached a place, as of right now, what I would call sustainability. Okay? And I'm hopeful that that trend will continue. We will watch it very closely, but at least we can take on a major storm at this point in time and recover from it without any financial detriment to us. But moving on from there, taking this 941 into consideration, it reduces the existing fund balance as of the end of 2018 down to 5.9. The targeted fund balance for GFOA best practices is 16.67%, which is $5.1 million. We exceed that number by $755,000. The city fund balance policy is 15%, which is $4.6 million. We exceed that number by $1.2 million. With that, that is my presentation of where we're at mid-year, beginning the 2020 budget process compared to the current fiscal year 2019. I'll be glad to entertain any questions you might possibly have.
So, Jerry, look, we know we've seen this so many times through the years, so right now it's early, but I would say, looking at those numbers and what you had in the reserve and the way you moved everything around, it'd be fair to say that there'd be no tax increase this year, if everything stays the way it is. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Let me answer that by saying I currently like our position. I like the position that we're in right now. I don't hate to rule out anything before we get to the end of the budget process.
Like the last couple of months when we first saw this one, we saw through the years, 1.8 million. We had to get creative. I mean, this doesn't look anywhere near like these past budgets.
Yes, again, it's because of the good work and the good decisions you have made to pull some of the recurring expenses out of the general fund, some of the good things that Bobby Wyatt and his group has done in pulling some of the expenses out of the general fund and quite honestly absorbing them over in the utility area. So a lot of those adjustments have really brought us to, again, that point of what I would call sustainability.
Yep, so we're in good shape.
I think one thing also that helped Councilman was that the amendment did not pass last
Right.
year.
Right.
If it had passed, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now.
Yeah.
But this is much more manageable, and it gives us. We may sleep a little easier during this budget process than
Yeah.
we
This one
did
was a lot better
last year.
than the last
yes.
couple ones. Yeah, good job.
Oh, you all get too nervous.
So we're,
You don't see us sweating.
So to Mr. Cobb's point, if that amendment had passed, thank you, Brian, I had forgotten that. If that amendment had passed, this number here would be $2.1 million right now, the way it stands.
so Jerry,
Easily.
are we still in catch-up mode from the recession as far as capital improvements and stuff like that?
Yes, sir, we are.
So what, and I don't see it up there, but, and I don't expect you to have an answer, but we were talking, strategizing over the last few years of taking reductions in GOB that occur and adding and offsetting those with millage increases. So that we kept the flat rate of 5.3 was the number. Are we going to get any reductions this year?
We do anticipate a reduction in the GO rate. What happens with that reduction is your decision as we move forward.
Okay.
Are there,
That was our strategy, wasn't it?
Keep it flat.
Yeah, okay.
is there, have you budgeted yet for any of the technologies related to the ADA requirements for the website and that, the stuff going on with that?
Have we defer to Mike. Mike, what have we included in the budget that's coming up for ADA? Good.
So it wouldn't be in that budget, it's already in our budget.
Mr. Pollack, most of those purchases would be in this year's budget.
Okay, all right.
So we're currently exploring about 6 products with different vendors to, one, scan and audit our website for accessibility, to remediate documents, to make them accessible, to provide closed captioning services for our video streaming services, and to also purchase a software suite to make our documents that we put out there more accessible as well. And lastly, a new agenda software suite, which would make our agendas put out there that we put out per meeting more accessible.
Okay, thank you.
And again, Mr. Pollack, not having the detail on that number would be included in the one, where is that? The 125 would be included in this number right here.
Okay.
Every year we just sweep across $125,000 out of the general fund to fund those very things. Again, when I came here 5 years ago, IT had no funding whatsoever. I was here for 2 months, and our servers were going to crash. We were running out of space, and we had to get an emergency server to keep us up and going. So we vowed to never let that happen again by programming in an automatic $125,000 transfer in over to IT technology just to accommodate some of those things. And what we buy and what we do, what we replace every year, year over year, is different. But nonetheless, there's revolving funding in there for those needs.
Right. And one last question. I know we, over the last couple of years, we've taken care of the bargaining units. When was the last time there's been a salary survey for our staff to make sure everybody, because I know they've taken
We
quite
just
a...
did that
Did that.
right before you got there.
Okay.
Actually, Councilman, last year we finished implementing the last salary survey. I think it was done in 2015, I think, maybe.
2014, 2015, we've been on a 3-year implementation schedule. First things we did, we hit the criticals. And then the second thing, we just kept working through the list as we went through. And last year, we finally reached the last implementation. So
Okay.
that's the good news.
Okay. All right.
What's the bad news?
Right now,
I mean, I hate asking questions I don't know, already know the answer to, but since you mentioned it.
we still, the bad news is that even with all the things that we've done, there are still certain positions, and this is not just Oviedo that I'm speaking about. This is across the board.
So this is within all the managers who you speak with?
Yes. There are positions that are just difficult to hire.
Plant operators.
Plant operators is one of them. Police officers is becoming more difficult to hire, and it's not because we don't pay enough. It's because there are less and less people that want to be police officers.
I think I saw 3 new recruits this morning.
Yes, sir.
Did I not, Chief?
That is true.
Okay.
We're even now sponsoring candidates through the academy. If we catch them early enough, we sponsor them.
I thought when I was at the clinic, I thought I saw. I was told there were 3 in there getting
Trades workers
physicals or something.
is another position that is difficult to find, and that's even in the private sector that those things are difficult. So I guess the bad news is that it's still, even with all the measures that we put into place and all the things that we're doing, and our HR department has really gotten creative in our marketing and as well as in our offer packages. But even with all those things, there are still certain positions that are just hard to fill. And so I guess that's the thing we're experiencing.
It's what we hear at mayors and managers every month from every manager.
So I guess that's the bad news. I had to say that was the bad news.
All right. I just want to make sure that that our benefits and to avoid too much turnover, so
Right.
that our benefits are comparable.
We'll take a closer look at that.
Brian, I got one thing. Council meeting or 2 ago, I talked about the golf course and the money that we pay these guys to run the golf course. And I asked if we could extend them 2-3 years, because I think that, it's become a political issue. It's a fun buzzword to talk about. But that golf course needs time for other bigger players to get interested in it, that we need to do a little more improvement. So I just want to know, has there been any thought in extending these guys for a couple of years and letting them finish, this place to the point where, I can ask them, are we done? Like I always ask you, are we done with this? Do we have this course the way we want it? And then we see what other entities want to become our partners, because I'm afraid that as the political scene changes here, people just think this is just something to kick around and it's a fun thing to talk about, and I think it needs time. I don't think you go and just say, well, the thing is up now, we're only making a little bit of money, we're done with it, that we need to just keep them around for 3-4 years more and make sure that they get it all done, it's done to where they think it's good, and then we see what happens. So I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts of extending these guys and putting some more money towards it down the road?
When you brought it up, Mr. Dunleavy and I have started discussions on what we can do. And as far our current agreement does allow us to go beyond this year, so that's the good news.
Right.
And so what we were planning was that our next budget work session is to have Mr. Dunleavy come in and give you a state of the golf course report like we did last year.
That'd be good.
And I hope to have the draft agreement for you to look at that time as well. So,
I mean, look, the people are always going to have different things, but, the few times I get screenshots emailed to me and things like that, I just don't want to see that after all we've done through years, that, something changes with us up here. Few of us are not here anymore, that people make a bad decision and a knee-jerk decision. Well, we just don't want that anymore. That's going to need, from everything that I've researched and people that I've talked to, still going to need a couple more years to put it to where it becomes a Cadillac place. It's getting there, and I just keep that in mind. It'll be good to hear from Nick. The other thing, the last time we sat here for the first one, people took out of this meeting, we're raising taxes, everything's getting crazy. I could pretty much say, after doing 14 of these now that we're not going to have to raise taxes this year. I mean, you never know what happens, but we are sitting in good shape. There's no thought of a tax increase. Could I be safe to say that?
I'm not anticipating a tax increase at this point, Mr. Henkin.
Good. I just wanted to get that out there. I mean, I think it's a great job. I mean, we're funding a lot of stuff. I mean,
Clarify though, right?
Exactly. Keith brought up some things. You know, we have some things still in our capital improvement plan that might need some funding and things like that. But all in all, I mean, for the times we're in, this is like pretty amazing to me. You know, and that $6.8 million in reserve. I remember sitting here telling Gestrick at a couple of things. I said, why are we not putting a little more each year away in that reserve? You know, we're always right about where we were a little under. And you guys, since that time, since you came on, you have put more and more away for a rainy day. So it's quite impressive. So just want to get that out there. Thank you.
We do need to clarify that when you say the tax isn't going to go up, it's the total tax.
Right.
Millage rate, obligation.
Millage rate's not changing.
Millage rate's not changing. It's always going to go up because you're going to have increase in property values, but the millage rate is not going to
No,
change.
we said if the GOB rate went down, the millage rate can go up so that we have a total that is unchanged.
Right, yeah, the total stays the same, correct.
The way the state classifies a tax increase is they look at the rollback rate, and anything above the rollback rate is a tax increase.
Right.
So if we don't go to the rollback rate, we need to take a look at the percentage of where we land finally between that and the rollback rate to come up with our percentage. And that is classified as a percentage of increase.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, the mayor has to announce it. You know, sometimes it is because of the way housing went up, but if you keep that millage rate the same, to me, you're not raising taxes. You're not raising, we're not raising the rate.
I think to your point, I think what's really important is you can see the cost of inflation in government. And, you know, you really have to be careful to make sure that you stay ahead of that or on track with that.
Yeah.
Which I think this model reflects very well.
It's good. Cool.
It was fun when the housing market was crashing and announcing that the millage was going up, but the taxes weren't increasing. Nobody ever understood that one. But anything else for Jerry?
Good job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
And
Mayor, if I could just close with one little thing. 5 years ago, Mr. Boop and I set out a plan. We had a goal, 2022. I know you've heard it many times, 2022. We wanted to be sustainable by 2022. And we've asked you all to make some very difficult decisions over the past few years with that. We want to make it to 2022 in mind. And what this is telling us is that our plan's working and that we are getting that sustainable model so that, as he mentioned, the first of those debts fell off, you know, and there's going to be more of those debts starting to fall off now, you know, in the coming years. And so the plan is starting to come to fruition, and those hard decisions that we've made over the past few years are starting to pay off for us. So that, yes, we can now start to address those needs we have for capital, you know, that we've addressed our operational needs. Now we can start to address the capital needs as well. So that's, as I said, I think we'll probably sleep a little easier as we get through this process. So.
well, you know, and as far as the golf course goes, council members, I mean, there are meetings still ongoing, and just a matter now of putting together a framework of what's needed to satisfy all users, and amenity increases and how those get funded. So Mr. Cobb and staff should have something, I would say, in the next 120 to 180 days is a fair number to bring forward to us. We had an impromptu meeting, myself, one of the engineers, one of the parties involved, and just happened to all be at the same place at the same time, and it was the perfect time to sit down and have that discussion. And it worked out fairly well, so we'll see.
I'll give you an observation. Saturday, I was out there just hitting a bucket of balls.
It was packed
And
there
it
on
was-
Saturday. I was showing a house.
People were
showing a house. I was
people
driving
were
through there.
lined up at the clubhouse waiting for carts, which means every single hole had players on it, and as people came off of 18, they took those carts and they gave them to people who were ready to go up number one. And that was going on all day.
Well, operationally, it's going to break even this year, and I think, Councilman Hankin, to answer your question, whenever I get that from anybody, I just politely listen to them, and the proper response is that this is part. First off, it was obviously, as we know, it's part now of the Parks and Recreation program. It's preserved land. The city's going to own forever, and it's the only Parks and Rec amenity we have that operationally breaks even.
Makes money, right.
It's it. So when folks are sometimes just using buzzwords and short-sightedness, you just have to show them the whole picture. Because based on those arguments, you'd shut it all down. Because no offense, Drew, Parks and Rec cost you money. That's quality of life. That's what it is.
Well, you get smaller cities, too, that have golf courses. If you look around, a lot of them they didn't take the time and the effort as we did, and they're just getting rid of their golf courses. That's the other thing, is you don't want to cut it off. You want to give it a little more time, because as they become less and less other places, ours becomes that more popular. I'm not a golfer, but I have said so many times, sometimes you sit up here and you vote for things not because you cared about it or it was important to you, but because the masses wanted it. And I know that Oviedo loves golf. I don't play golf. I've been asking Britton for 10 years. He still will not teach me how to play golf. I taught him how to bowl, but
because I'm already his handicap, so
but
doesn't need another one.
But I think if you just be patient with that, and to those that come up here after us, be a little patient with that. Don't be in such a hurry to get rid of something that I think is going to turn into a gold mine. Nothing goes.
The popularity of the sport isn't going down; it's actually growing. And
of course,
there
it's
are
going
two rumors. One very strong rumor that a golf course close by is going to close in June, and another one not too far away is rumored to be closing. What that translates is, and it's already happening, is they're getting more around. It used to be $20 to play out there. Now it's $45.
Right.
And it's packed. So
Right.
it's the revenues are going to really go through the roof this year.
It's going to be a good amenity.
Can you imagine if we updated the facilities as the discussions we're having, the type of revenue that can get
Oh yeah.
pumped out of Twin Rivers? I mean, a lot of what's holding that course back now is that clubhouse.
True. And they're doing well.
They are. No, I'm not saying that they're not. I'm just
The
saying
restaurant is doing very well. They're packed.
if that was an updated amenity.
And something to also think about, too, you think about people that bought in there years and years ago. Their dream was to live on a golf course. It'd be like buying a condo and you want to look at the beach and somebody builds a building and blocks your view of the beach. They wanted to live on a golf course. So anybody that would think about messing that up down the road, those people, your residents, bought that place because that's what they wanted to see. So to take that away and give up the future financial goodies, for lack of a better word, that it's going to create is just not good. So I think we're there. I think this looks awesome, and I think we will sleep. A couple times you came in here during the gastric years, you walked in, oh my God, we got a lot of work to do. This is better.
Yeah, I can echo what Mr. Britton just said. I took my clubs down to get new grips on them on a Saturday. They said, just come on down. And I actually witnessed them offering someone, saying, why don't you go out and hit on the range because all the carts are out on the course. I can't put you out on the course yet. I also played in a recent charity tournament, and when people found out who I was, there were a lot of thank yous, and how unsolicited, how well the course looked, how beautiful it was, how well it played. Just compliment. And I was talking to Nick not long ago, and he was talking about the people that he's learning that are coming back. They had left because of the prior ownership, and now they're coming back and they're playing. And we actually, the folks from McCoy came down and visited with us and toured this course, and they couldn't say enough good things about it.
Because guess what they're doing? Taking their course back over.
Yes. They have a unique situation. They own the land, but they don't own the operation yet. And so they're looking at that. They came down to learn from us. We've also had the City of Sanford reach out to us as well.
Really?
They want to come down and visit the course. We're trying to set up a time for them to come.
Everyone's trying to figure out how we're doing it.
So it'd be nice if we could get all those cities together, even Cocoa Beach, Stanford, Ocoee, Castleberry, and create a network where we could get discounts to residents and kind of churn the...
That's one of the things. The assistant city manager at Ocoee is a good friend of mine, and while we were out on the course, we talked about that, having that sister course relationship. Talking with the assistant city manager over at Sanford, we talked about the same idea about doing something like that too. So I've raised the issue, so hopefully it might get some legs.
Good.
All right.
You got it.
Yeah, I get nothing but compliments whenever, people have played on the golf course. I see people at church and all around, and they can't say, they can't say enough good things about the turnaround on the golf course.
You know what it is? There's so many things, and you say it all the time. I mean, there's just, when you drive around, you look at other cities, they're all great in their own way, but this place is a little bit special. We have all these amenities, and yes, you could cut this and you could cut that. Wow, they got all this money in it, but you take away such a quality of life to have that type of course here in the city that golfers like yourself and others are saying this place is amazing, the cities want to come on. I'm just yes, and I am sending a message to those that are going to come up here sooner than later. Don't be so hasty. Just give it some time. That's going to be a cash cow for the city, and it's going to be an amenity that people are going to love. And I think that was a great decision that we all made. We get beat up a little bit for it, but you didn't have 400 homes in the middle of your city, and now you got this great thing out there. So, all right, enough of that.
Anything else?
Good.
All righty, Brian, on number 4, city manager evaluation.
Mayor, I'm going to turn that back to you. I don't have a presentation for that.
I don't have any.
That is a discussion of...
I don't have any items on it, though. in my hands.
So we had, Barbara sent it out, and I would have to point out that Barbara sent
Mr.
out
Groot
some
have
of the
something to
columns
share
out
with
of alignment on the Word document. So
Yeah, I saw it. I didn't print it.
I think the overall ratings were very, very good for Brian's performance.
Mr. Groot, do you have something to hand out?
Yes. I sent you this via email.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Contract, I thought you'd like to have a hard copy in your hand.
You're not going to read this whole thing to us, are you?
No, not at all.
Mayor, would you mind if I
Go ahead.
step out?
No, we want you to sit here on this.
I think this would be best to have this
Actually,
discussion without...
in years past, let's go way back in history. The staff used to clear out, and the city manager and the city attorney would stay.
I was wondering why they were all leaving.
I'll step out so y'all can have frank discussions.
Great.
The chief wanted a good shot.
I agree. His last day is the end of the month.
All right, could I start? Because I kind of started this whole thing.
Well, why don't we just, 1 second. Lon, do you have anything to add before I turn?
Councilmember Hankin is the lead on this. I can quickly summarize what's different in this contract as opposed to what the current contract says, if that would be helpful.
All right, why don't you do that first, and then we'll go to Steve.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. On page 2, the $170,000 salary is, I think, Mr. Cobb's making 165, 658 or something like that. Right?
All right, so right now it's about 165.
So this rounds it to 170. Okay. On page 4, section 7, that makes it clear. The language clarifies the issue about rental cars being rented, city providing a leased vehicle, but in any event, Mr. Cobb could use the city's fuel depot for the vehicle he uses. Right now, he uses a leased vehicle, and he does use the fuel depot, and that's the anticipated way.
But it wasn't clarified.
It wasn't very clear.
Okay, so you've made it clear now.
We made it clear.
Okay.
On page 6, at the bottom of section 11, there's a new D that provides, and this doesn't do everything that Councilmember Hankin was interested in doing, but I think it does as much as you possibly can, which is, should the city manager be terminated, it provides that he must serve 12 months as a consultant for the city.
Okay.
On page 7, section 14, this
Wasn't there something in there already about severance?
There's severance. That's not severance.
Okay.
This would not be severance. This would be a requirement that the city manager serve as a consultant for 12 months after he's terminated.
Is there severance in here as well?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Section.
Yes.
Section,
Well, it says section 12, I see.
right,
Severance,
right.
Okay.
Okay. Section 12C-A provides for the severance as allowed by...
All right, so 5 months. That's
Yes, sir.
20 weeks. Okay.
Okay. On section 14, it provides that should the city manager resign, that the city has the option of requiring him to be a consultant for 6 months. And that is pretty much the highlight of the changes that are proposed.
All right, so salary increase, an increase in severance. No, severance stayed the
That
same.
severance stays the same.
But the year of
Consultant.
consultantship.
And the fuel depot.
Well, you just clarified that he was using it anyway.
So we're going to get him an electric car now, right?
That's what we should do.
So his salary increase is pretty much on par. I'm just doing rough
That's
numbers.
about 3%.
It's about 3%, which is on par with the rest of the city employees, so.
Yeah, and if you look at
The other thing I should tell you, and I know you want, is I think part of the goal was to have Mr. Cobb go up to the Altamont Lake Mary type level, and Altamont city manager is being paid at the rate of 175. Lake Mary's 175,968. Now they just did a change. I don't know if that was the time. Jennifer, I don't know if that's at the time the survey was done. That's what it was. And then
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to pay Kevin Smith.
and then Sanford Sanford was very close to the 170 also.
Okay.
Now, they're arguing
It's in the ballpark.
it's in the ballpark. So those are what you wanted to get close to.
yeah.
That one.
Well, I remember when we hired Jerry Sieber for about $115,000. What happened to those days? 120, I think it was back then. What were we paying you for the month?
Excuse me?
The month you were our city manager, what did we pay you?
I don't even remember.
That was fun. Remember that?
It was interesting.
Mr. Williford, your services are no longer needed. Lonnie, you're the city manager.
I found out
How it happened.
I found out during a lunch break up in Palm Coast.
Yeah. Anyway, Steve, you wanted the floor.
Well, I just want to, no, I mean, I wish Brian was here. I'll tell him when he comes back in. But, I mean, look, we all been here for a long time. I mean, this guy, I mean, he hits it out of the park. I mean, when I wrote his review, I mean, I could tell, you did a great job, by the way, putting them all together. You took everybody's stuff. I didn't have to look at every one. I mean, I gave him exceeds right down the line because I really could not find anything that he doesn't do well. I saw there was a few other comments, maybe some things that I didn't disagree with, but me writing it, I'm more of a, give me the big picture. In high school, I'm not reading the book, just give me the cliff notes. And when I look at Brian in an overall picture, I saw it. I think I was the one that said, let's have him get to Altamont and Lake Mary. So now he's kind of right in that ballpark. I mean, I guess you could argue it, but I mean, I didn't work for Williford, but I knew Gene and I saw what he did, and I've seen Catherine and Jerry and Rich and all of them. He clearly, by far, is the best one. And if you go around and you call his directors, as I did, and you talk to them, they all say, you know, they love working for him. So, I mean, it's well-deserved. We didn't do it for 2 years, his review. It just got sidetracked. So, I mean, it was a long time coming. But I think you all caught, for Brian, what we all think of him. I mean, it wasn't anything I didn't agree with. So we got a good city manager. I'm happy that if anything should happen, you know, change of us or whatever, should he not be here, that was the change, Dom, that he stays for 1 year as a consultant at the full pay plus his severance pay. I wanted it to be 5 years, to be honest with you. I don't mind telling you that. I thought he deserved that.
I don't think we could bind another council.
We don't,
No.
No,
We couldn't do it, so I did it as long as we could. Because you know, city manager is a tough job, especially when the political scene changes. And you know, a guy that does it, I always want people to like not worry about that. You know, I'm from an old school. You know, If they're doing a good job, keep them there. If they do the unthinkable, it's in the contract that you have some remedy to remove somebody, for criminal stuff. But, I wanted Brian to have a little peace of mind, so I think he did great.
Perfect example of political flux is Winter Springs.
Right.
Kevin Smith's been there for years, doing a great job, and, opportunity arose, and he jumped ship as fast as he could.
Yeah.
So,
Are
Where's
we,
he at now?
is the
he's
evaluation
going to be the city
gonna be
manager of Lake
published?
Well, I think the idea is, obviously, there's no action asked tonight, obviously, but on April 1st, I think there'll be a whole package be made available for you all and the public to look at.
We'll have
We
to,
just need to do
And you'll have to-
the formatting change, so it doesn't look like the columns are out of alignment. That's,
well, does the actual review go on?
I don't know, that's what I'm
Or is
asking.
it just the contract? Or?
Depends on whatever's put in the agenda pack.
what happens with that? Come on.
I don't know what's been done in the past.
Do you need that on tape? I'm sorry. Come on up here. Barbara needs to hear it. Sorry.
I'm not aware of what's happened in the past in terms of the agenda packet and what material was made public for the meeting, but we can certainly look into that, if it was just the contract or the contract and the performance evaluation.
I think this is the first time we changed the contract, so I would assume just the contract, but I don't know. You guys figure it out.
I don't believe performance evaluations are public information.
Oh, they are.
It's in the personnel file. so-
They're public records, whether you put them in the agenda pack.
My concern is that we
You can tell.
format it correctly, so it looks like all the columns are lined up. Because right now, they're out of alignment. It looks like he's got, needs improvement on a bunch of stuff when it's really exceeds, meets expectations.
All right, so if they have to be put into our agenda package, could we just make sure everything's formatted correctly? Mr. Britton, as Councilman Britton requested, and we'll just leave that in your capable hands, and you all figure out what has to be in that agenda item for us to, so we're adopting the new contract. Is that what we're doing, Brian? Lonnie?
That would be the proposal, yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Everybody good with that?
Take that action tonight, or we do it on the...
No, that would be a council meeting.
Okay.
Chief?
And I've got a unique perspective, having been a director and worked for him, and how he,
Did he earn this?
without a doubt,
No.
it's probably just from handling me he earned it.
You were a problem child. We've heard.
Mr. Mayor, I don't...
That was one black
I don't
mark.
have much, obviously don't get involved in stuff like this.
He likes Dale much better.
But I would...
I can understand why.
But I think there's one thing that should be said on the record about the consultancy, and that is, not only is it good to have, a continuity between managers, but, Teresa's a wonderful worker. She's a brilliant lady, but no one knows the city of Oviedo's comprehensive plan and the history, which is really important when it comes to development activities, better than Brian Cobb. I don't think anybody ever will. So you have that, and this city's always going to be progressive and developing in a positive way, and that would be a real gem to have beyond a departure as city manager. I just thought that would be important to
And
understand.
that's why I wanted to try to get that little cushion there, because I feel like you have somebody here now. We've all seen multiple managers. They all had some talents, but not like this guy.
I know, I work for four others.
All right.
All right.
All right.
That's all I have.
Is there anything else?
No, we're good.
All righty, well, it looks like we're done with this portion of the meeting, and Mr. Groot, we're going into an executive session after this? Yes, sir. All righty, we're adjourned.